Matt, those big 3-year-old fillies are doing it again. Now we get to turn to the 3-year-old males for a big weekend of racing.
We sure do. We got 3 preps for the 3-year-olds that are still in racing. We've got the Jim Dandy, the Curlin, and the Haskell. And, of course, we have to talk about the retirement of Justify.
Happy retirement to Justify. And, hey, Matt, the Haskell is more than a prep. Watch it now, all here on HorseCenter. Welcome to another edition of HorseCenter, everyone. I am Brian Zipsy, and as always, I have the excellent pleasure of being joined by my co-host to the East Coast. That's Matt Shipman. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good, Brian. We'll go from high to low. We'll go anywhere so that we can get HorseCenter out every week.
Saratoga Springs Library, Matt, you've never looked better. Let's jump right into the show. I feel like a broken record, but can we talk about these 3-year-old fillies one more week in a row, Matt? Just sensational. What a crop, led, of course, by Monomoy Girl, the daughter of Tapizar. You saw her Sunday do her thing in the Coaching Club American Oaks right there at Saratoga.
I sure did, Brian. And these 3-year-old fillies are so good, I don't mind talking about them over and over and over again. But, yeah, I got to see Monomoy Girl at Brad Cox's barn a couple days before the race, and she's a real sweetheart. But I've always loved Monomoy Girl, and she was just fantastic in the Coaching Club American Oaks. Once jockey Florent Giroux got her out of the gate alertly, basically it was all over at that point because she took charge of the race, she took charge of the pace, and everybody was at her mercy, and she was not slowing down at any point in the race nor giving ground, and opened up to a nice 3-length victory, defeating once again Midnight Pursuit, who, as we know, Brian, is a very good filly in her own right.
Yeah, Midnight Pursuit. Poor Midnight Pursuit, Matt. She's run 6 times this year, 4 easy graded stakes wins, including races like the St. Anita Oaks and the Mother Goose, where she absolutely dominated. But her 2 tries against Monomoy Girl, the first Friday in May, the Kentucky Oaks, and then again Sunday here at Saratoga, she just was no match for her. Sure, Monomoy Girl had a tactical advantage in the small field, but Midnight Pursuit had every chance. Frankly, I thought she would give her a run, and you could tell at the top of the stretch it was going to be all Monomoy Girl once again. Can't say enough about this Brad Cox trained Florent Giroux owned filly match. She's won 8 of 9 lifetime. Her only loss came in a real tough stretch battle last year as a 2-year-old in the Goldenrod Stakes at Churchill Downs, and this year 5 races, 5 fantastic wins. As you said, 4 straight Grade 1 wins. The only non-Grade 1 was the Grade 2 Rachel Alexandra to start the year. She broke terrible. Normally on or near the lead. That day she came from last to blow by the field. So I don't know what this filly can't do. Maybe a 1.25 miles or more won't be in her wheelhouse, but who's to say as good as she looks and as much a racehorse she is. Midnight Pursuit may get another shot down the road at the Breeders' Cup Distaff. She might go Alabama for now, but no question, Monomoy Girl in a very loaded 3-year-old filly division is the cream of the crop.
She sure is. She's the cream, maybe, Brian, of all the horses that are left in training, in my opinion, but that's another discussion. And for Monomoy Girl, it looks like the Cotillion is going to be next in September as a stepping stone to the Breeders' Cup Distaff. And when I talked to Brad Cox last week, he said as long as things are good with Monomoy Girl, he's hopeful that she'll run as a 4-year-old.
That's fantastic news, seeing this excellent daughter, because she was really good at 2. She's even better at 3. Like I said, the only thing that she hasn't proven is a 1.25 miles, but she really doesn't need to, so she won't go Alabama. It looks like, as Matt said, the Cotillion, which is 9 furlongs and is 7 figures at Park, so it makes sense on the schedule, makes sense from a distance standpoint. Meanwhile, Matt, her competition as 3-year-old fillies go is just strong and deep. We saw another example just Tuesday evening. just over the Peace Bridge there in Fort Erie. And Wonder Gadot was terrific again. The Canadian-bred boys cannot handle this American-bred three-year-old filly out of Medaglia d'Oro.
Yeah, this Mark Casse trainee had been having trouble finding the winner's circle, although running a good race almost every time, until she went into the Canadian Triple Crown, and she has swept the first two jewels of that series. She went to Fort Erie, lots of rain. There's been lots of rain all over the Northeast. A very, very sloppy track, but that did not deter her in any way. She put a whooping on the boys in that field. She won by 6 lengths as the odds-on favorite. So, hey, she has continued to do fantastic things. She's a millionaire now, too.
Yeah, it was a romp in the slop up in Canada, Matt. You know, she has had, in her defense, she did do a little, as you mentioned, a little losing streak after winning the Demoiselle impressively late last year in New York. Part of that was at the hands of Monomoy Girl, a very good second in the Kentucky Oaks, finishing ahead of Midnight Basoo, among others. But she's got 2 different things in her last 2 races, Matt, and we should mention them. First off, Johnny V took her right to the lead in the slop, which turned out to be smart, but that's something she's never done before, really. And the 2 things that I see different here are blinkers. She got blinkers added the last 2 starts, and also the distance has increased. She went to 1.25 miles for the Queen's Plate, which she won easily. And then, of course, this Prince of Wales on Tuesday was 1 mile 3/16. So obviously she likes the distance, and I think the addition of blinkers has helped, Matt. And she didn't need much help anyway. 13 starts now in her lifetime already. She's only a 3-year-old filly, of course, so she's dancing every dance. She's finished in the money 12 times. The only time she didn't finish in the money was the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies, where she had a bad trip. She's won on fast dirt, sloppy dirt now. She's won on turf. She's won on synthetic surfaces. In the Prince of Wales, the horses that ran 2nd and 3rd to her in that big field in the Queen's Plate, ahead by a century, and Cooler Mike ran 2nd and 3rd here at Fort Erie. So despite the different surface, different condition, different distance, very much the same result. Wonder Gadot looking like a bit of a hero in Canada, maybe a superhero, Matt.
Good one, Brian Zipsy.
Yeah, so while we won't have a Canadian Triple Crown winner, as it appears that she is set to come back to the United States for the Grade 1 Alabama instead of going after that Canadian Triple Crown, it's a move that Cassie's talked about for a while now, wanting to really point her for the Breeders' Cup Distaff. Alabama is a huge Grade 1 race, of course, here in America. And the Canadian Triple Crown ends at Woodbine 1.5 miles on the turf, which she probably would be a big favorite again. But Cassie sees it as a avenue for bigger and even bigger things in America. Any thoughts on that decision, Matt? It's she's bucking history a little bit by skipping the chance. She's the first horse in 15 years to win both the Queen's Plate and the Prince of Wales, by the way.
Yeah, I guess Mark Casse must feel pretty strongly that is the right thing to do for this horse, because Casse has spent so many years with a big string of horses up at Woodbine, and he has had so much success up there over the years. For him to pass on that final jewel up at the Canadian track must mean that he feels strongly about her running in the Alabama.
Strongly about the Alabama, and maybe also the best way to get to the Breeders' Cup Distaff. So it looks like we won't have a Canadian Triple Crown winner, but of course we did have an American Triple Crown winner. We're going to talk about him next. Now, Matt, we just had to talk about those 3-year-old fillies, those fantastic 3-year-old fillies of 2018. But of course, the biggest news that's happened recently was the announcement. Many of us thought it was an inevitable announcement, but it did come yesterday with the retirement of the undefeated Triple Crown winner, Justify.
Yeah, Brian, I think inevitable is a good adjective to use in there, quite frankly, and I think I've said it before. I didn't really expect that we would see Justify on the track again. There's just there's just too much online in terms of the breeding money. So a little ankle problem was probably enough to make the whole thing official. Justify will be parading at Del Mar on Saturday, which I guess will be his final appearance on a racetrack anywhere, and then he will be heading off to WinStar Farm to get acquainted with his new digs. The 6 wins in 4 months was, including 4 Grade 1s, including the Triple Crown, was an achievement that no other horse has ever put together in the history of racing. So I think it'll take some time for people to find their place in history for Justify.
Yeah, Matt, what he did in 4 months, as you say, unprecedented, and obviously a horse of great talent, the son of Scat Daddy, trained by Bob Baffert and owned by many, including WinStar Farm. It's a testament to how talented he was to be able to do what he did in such a short amount of time, sweeping through the Triple Crown, 6 races, less than 4 months. He only debuted, of course, back in a sprint race back in February. So really amazing. Hopefully the fans at Del Mar will, a lot of people out there will get a chance to see him out on the track one more time, and then he'll be headed to WinStar Farm. With all the money involved, the insurance and his value at stud, it's hard to argue with his ownership for retiring and doing the wise thing financially, if you will, and that's retirement. How much was the ankle a part of that? We'll never know for sure, but who's to say that the injury wasn't enough to really sideline him for a while? And certainly none of us want to see Justify at less than 100%. So for another reason, it makes sense that we won't see Justify again after his big win at Belmont Park. Can't fault either of those reasons for the announced retirement of Justify. But on the other hand, I think the sport does suffer. This is another example, and maybe the biggest example ever, of an American horse going off to stud early and us losing the chance. Matt, when I grew up watching horse racing as a little tyke and loving sports, other sports as well, it was always about having a hero and watching your heroes run. And unfortunately, in American racing, it's becoming harder and harder to watch our heroes run. And unfortunately, Justify becomes another example of that. Bob Baffert had a pretty short run with Arrogate on the top. Certainly, Arrogate was way on the top, well on the top in his 8 months and his 4 huge wins. And now Justify even a shorter reign on top. I just hope we never get to the day where 6 races is looked at as, wow, at least we got 6 races. Maybe we see a Baffert horse who debuts in the Santa Anita Derby, wins the Kentucky Derby, and retires with 2 races in the future. I'm being a little bit pessimistic there, but at this point, I just hope we never see that.
Hey, Brian, you know what? We've always got the fillies.
We've always got the fillies, and we've got Wonder Gadot, who's already run 13 times in less than her first 12 months on the racetrack. So good stuff there, Matt. And again, don't want to be negative at all. We wish Justify the very best. Matt and I were both out in the crowd for the Belmont Stakes, enjoying the spectacle and the just really good feeling, good scene that was at Belmont Park. Wonderful horse. We're sorry to see him go, but if it's for the best, it's for the best. With Justify retired, Matt, we have a whole new picture in the 3-year-old male division. Certainly, Justify will be the champion 3-year-old. Certainly, Justify will be the horse of the year. I even saw a few people mention Monomoy Girl as a potential candidate with everything she's done. And as remarkable as her career is in 2018 and could still yet be, I don't think there's any doubt that Justify 6 for 6 with a Triple Crown will end up as the horse of the year. But the second half of the year will be without him, And the second half of the year really heats up this weekend, both at the Jersey Shore and upstate New York. Monmouth Park will host its summertime classic, Matt. The Haskells on Sunday. And we very may well have the second best 3-year-old male to run this year in Good Magic.
Yeah, this is certainly an opportunity now with the void that Justify is leaving in the 3-year-old division. This is certainly a time for several good candidates who are running this weekend to step up and take the leadership of what's left of the 3-year-old division. And the Haskell on Sunday has Good Magic in there. Good Magic was the champion 2-year-old from 2017. Good Magic finished second in the Kentucky Derby after winning the Bluegrass. I think that the Haskell is Good Magic's race to win if we see that horse, who's now trained by Chad Brown, put his best on the race course at Monmouth Park.
Absolutely, Matt. Good Magic, he hasn't run a ton yet in his career. And of course, the Chad Brown, the Eclipse Award winner, got his first Eclipse Award last year. Train keeps on a rolling. He started off gangbusters up in Saratoga. Good Magic, 2-year-old champion last year, decisive winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And really this year, we saw him there in the Bluegrass, beat a decent field. At Keeneland, he did it in a professional manner. And I can't say a negative thing about his 2 efforts in the Triple Crown. Very good second. He tried Justify at the top of the stretch. He wasn't good enough, but he was good enough to be second of 20 in the Kentucky Derby. And then the Preakness, whether Chad Brown wanted it or not, Jose Ortiz took him right to the throat latch of Justify for much of the race. Again, not quite good enough to beat the undefeated Triple Crown winner, but Good Magic sure stuck around in that Preakness, eventually finishing 4th, but beaten just about a length. So Good Magic, he's ready to take over the spot as the best 3-year-old now that Justify is away. And I agree with you. He's the favorite, but if he runs his race, he's strictly the one to beat in here, Matt. But there are other good horses, including one of the horses that passed him late in the Preakness, Bravazzo. Dwayne Lucas has said that he is doing great. No worse for wear from his busy spring campaign, including being the only horse to run against Justify all 3 times in the Triple Crown, a very good second in the Preakness. And you have the top 2 from the Ohio Derby, and Corba Leaps and Lone Sailor might both still have something better left in them as they visit the Jersey Shore.
Yeah, Corba Leaps and Lone Sailor might be horses that are getting better. Corba Leaps, of course, won a close battle down the stretch against Lone Sailor, and before that, Corba Leaps finished second in the Peter Pan at Belmont Park. Lone Sailor finished 8th in the Kentucky Derby, which was a nice performance, and then 5th in the Preakness. He's trained by Tom Amoss, who's never afraid to take a shot in the big races. And this week, Tom Amoss said, "Hey, this 3-year-old division is wide open now that Justify is gone, and he's going to take his shot in there."
Yeah, and I don't see why not. If you say 8th in the Derby, 5th in the Preakness, that might not sound great, but he had some traffic trouble, and he was running pretty darn well in that Kentucky Derby, in that sloppy Kentucky Derby. And then his 5th in the Preakness, beaten just over 2 lengths. So Lone Sailor ran sneaky good races in the Derby and the Preakness after just missing in the Louisiana Derby. And unfortunately for him and his connections, he just missed again in that good Ohio Derby behind Corba Leaps. I think Lone Sailor fits with just about anybody in this crop now, and he is kind of a wild card in the Haskell. Unfortunately for him, I think as a closer, we found out that Promises Fulfilled will not be in the Haskell. He's going to stick with sprinting, which lessens the speed quotient in this Haskell. The other 3 horses, it looks like a 7-horse field, Matt. Golden Brown just pulled off a big upset on the turf at Delaware. Roman Union for Kelly Breen, Navy Commander. They all look to be horses on the improve, but probably not quite of the level of horses like Good Magic and Bravazzo and the Ohio Derby horses. So To me, it's an interesting race. Bravazzo, Core Beliefs, Lone Sailor. I think one of them is going to run lights out, and it's up to Good Magic to run his best to win the race.
Yeah, it's that opportunity to step up, and since the Triple Crown races have been run, those horses that have come back have not fared especially well. So we'll see if Good Magic can break that trend.
I think he can, because I think he's just that type of quality horse. People are down on the 3-year-old crop now, and I can see why after if I won Triple Crown besides him, but I think Good Magic has proven that he is the real deal. And unfortunately, from a betting standpoint, I expect him to win the Haskell as the favorite. So, Matt, the Haskell is not the only big 3-year-old race of the weekend. Of course, you have to look up towards your neck of the woods, at least your summertime home here, and that's Saratoga. I will get on my soapbox a little bit here. I'm looking at the fields for Friday's Curlin, Saturday's Jim Dandy. I see 6 horses entered in the Curlin on Friday. I see 5 horses entered in the Jim Dandy on Saturday. And of course, there's one horse cross-entered, that's Re-Ride for Steve Asmussen. So at the most, we're going to have 10 horses running in these 2 stakes, both for 3-year-olds, same distance, 1 day apart. Matt, why isn't the Curlin maybe an undercard race for the Travers? Why is it run the day before the Jim Dandy?
Yeah, I think that issue needs to be examined. 3 races restricted to the 3-year-olds on 3 consecutive days. The last few years has not resulted in big fields. The Jim Dandy has been a smallish field for the past 2-3 years, as far as I can remember. So I'm not sure if there's the need for that. Although I guess ideally, the Curlin, which is a race that's restricted to horses that have not won a stakes race, going a mile or more, is an opportunity for a horse to step up in an easier spot and prepare for possibly in the Travers. But on the other hand, in today's world and the road to the Derby, it just doesn't seem like we have many of those kind of horses left over. And why not at this point take a shot in the Jim Dandy? Because the horses that are in the Jim Dandy, some of them, could even qualify for the Curlin. So, yeah, I think the racing secretaries will have to take a look at that.
There you go, Matt. I'm glad you're in agreement with me. I know people don't want to see 5-horse fields in these nice stakes races at Saratoga. Let them run in the Jim Dandy. The Curlin can be, like I said, an undercard race on the Travers. The Jim Dandy is suffering for it. I know they want to create a springboard, keep horses at Saratoga, springboard to the Travers, but they're really hurting the Jim Dandy as much as anything, and the Jim Dandy deserves better. This year's Jim Dandy, having said that, we have a field of 5, and there's some good horses in there. In fact, there are no bums about it in this year's Jim Dandy, led by Vino Rosso, the Wood Memorial winner, tenfold, who ran a very good race in the Preakness. You got stakes winners in Flame Away. Sporting Chance was a Grade 1 winner at Saratoga as a 2-year-old for D. Wayne Lucas. And Re-Ride is still an interesting horse, having competed at Dubai early this year.
Yeah, in some ways, the Jim Dandy is similar to the Haskell in that I think we're going to have a big favorite, and in the Jim Dandy, that's probably going to be Vino Rosso. But I feel like in the Jim Dandy, there's a lot more question marks in this field in terms of Vino Rosso dominating compared to Good Magic in the Haskell. We got several horses that ran in at least one of the Triple Crown races, and we got to know on the Derby Trail. Flame Away, for instance, we remember on the Derby Trail was Mr. Consistent racing on all kinds of different surfaces in his early career and coming up with some big wins. But recently, he set the pace in the Ohio Derby and faded to finish 6th in there. And before that, he was 13th in the Kentucky Derby. So we'll have to see if his trainer, Mark Casse, has got him ready to turn that around and have a bigger performance in there. Tenfold is one of 2 for Steve Asmussen, and Tenfold was 5th in the Belmont and 3rd in the Preakness and 5th in the Arkansas Derby after winning his first 2 races at Oaklawn Park. So here's a horse that did well in a couple of jewels of the Triple Crown. There's no Justify in here. So is this a race where if he runs his best, he could win it? I think for sure. You mentioned Reride, who ran a really nice 3rd in the UAE Derby behind Mendelssohn, but Mendelssohn didn't turn out to do as well in his subsequent dirt starts. So what does that mean? We know Steve Asmussen has a way with these Derby kind of horses, and in that they can tend to get better as the year goes on with him. So there's Reride if he decides to go in the Jim Dandy. Sporting Chance for the coach, Dwayne Lucas. And let's not forget, Brian, at the beginning of Sporting Chance's career, there were 2 wins at Saratoga. So we know that Sporting Chance likes the surface at the Spa, but with little time off and training, hopefully Dwayne Lucas has got Sporting Chance over some of his difficulties down the stretch and his shying away from the whip. We know he's got talent, but there we are with Vino Rosso and Todd Pletcher. Brian, you and I both liked him heading into the Kentucky Derby, and he ran well getting 9th, and he was 4th in the Belmont. Maybe he could have gotten 3rd with a little different strategy, and we liked Vino Rosso off his Wood Memorial win. I still feel if we get the best Vino Rosso that he's going to be hard to beat in the Jim Dandy, but I'm not sure how confident I am that we'll see that Wood Memorial winner's best in here.
Yeah, Vino Rosso, I'm not sure he'll be a heavy favorite. Looking at Tenfold's last 2 races, very good, and certainly they were 4th and 5th in the Belmont. Vino Rosso, of course, had to make an earlier move at Justify that day. I think that took him out of his desired running style. Rapoli, of course, being his owner, being a little upset about the ride of the other horse he got in that race and wanted to set it up a little bit more for Vino Rosso. He had to do some dirty work, and then he couldn't hold off Hofberg for 3rd, or Gronkowski for that matter. So he finished 4th in the Belmont. I've been kind of a fan of this horse all along. The Son of Curlin is a horse I think that could still have bigger things ahead of him. Nice win in the Wood Memorial, and that field kind of reminds me of this field a little bit. Although in the Wood Memorial, he got speed to run at, and I'm not sure he's going to get much of a pace to run at here. You know, there are some types who flame away for sure, who like to be on or near the lead in here. So hopefully it'll be a reasonable pace for Vino Rosso. I have a feeling he's the best horse, but I'm not even confident in that with Tenfold. Tenfold's only run 5 times in his life. The Preakness obviously was very good, and then the Belmont was a huge ask after such a lightly raced path to a good Preakness. So Tenfold is interesting. Not sure what we're going to see from Reride. Flame Away, as you said, his recent races have not been as good. So I'm sure he'll be out there and maybe he bounces back. Sporting Chance actually is a little bit more interesting to me. Dwayne Lucas, runner, as you said, he's like Saratoga, keeps trying him in good races, and he's run decently enough to expect something from Sporting Chance if he, as you said, puts it all together mentally. Again, though, I'm not big on this race. I expect Reride to run in this race, by the way, given that it's only a 5-horse race. So I would think he would go in the Jim Dandy and not the Curlin wheel. We'll have to wait till Friday to know for sure. But to me, Sporting Chance might be the one that could pop in, but the favorites look tough. Vino Rosso, Tenfold. I'm siding with Vino Rosso just because I've liked him more, but he might be at a pace disadvantage. So should be interesting to see if nothing else, this race is a prep for the Travers, and if it's a real paceless race, it might be a race that just sets up horses for the Saratoga's biggest race, the Travers.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that analysis in there. I think if Vino Rosso runs well, he might be tough to beat. But again, I'm not real confident. The Jim Dandy hasn't been particularly kind to favorites the last few years also. So it'll be an interesting race to bet.
Yeah. And while we're talking about the 3-year-old races at Saratoga, I talked about the disappointment of the field ties with the Curlin and the Jim Dandy. I wouldn't be at all surprised if the Travers favorite, and there have been Travers winners to come out of the Curlin, but if the Travers favorite this year comes out of the Curlin, and that's if, of course, Hofburg runs his best race. Now, he's yet to win a stakes race, but he went from that nice maiden win in March to running second in the Florida Derby, and he really well closing 7th in the Kentucky Derby with trouble. And then he was 3rd in the Belmont. So Hofburg, well-bred son of Tapit for trainer Bill Mott, certainly is the class of this small field, which I think will be a 5-horse field now for the Curlin. And I want to see what Hofburg can do. He might have pace disadvantage just like Vino Rosso, but against this field, I think he should dominate, and an impressive win by here. Maybe only Good Magic would be the horse that could be bet below him. If Good Magic wins the Haskell, then Hofburg might be the second choice. But he could be the Travers favorite. I expect him to win at low odds on Friday. Maybe we'll see Hofburg, Vino Rosso, and Good Magic set something up nicely for the Travers.
Yeah, I think that Bill Mott was looking to give Hofburg, get him a victory, give him a confidence builder when he opted for the Curlin over the Jim Dandy and head into the Travers, which we've known has been the goal for Hofburg for the past few months.
Absolutely. Bill Mott, it's not his fault that the Curlin and the Jim Dandy are 24 hours apart. So he's taking advantage of the conditions, if you will, of the Curlin, and gets a Travers prep in for Hofburg. And we likely that Hofburg rolls Friday in the Curlin Stakes. All right, Matt, that's our preview for Saturday's big 3-year-old races. I hope you're having a great time up there in Saratoga. I've been here in Kentucky doing some business for our other venture. Of course, I'm talking about Derby Day Racing. Our filly, Schooner, the good-looking daughter of Looking at Lucky, is here with Buff Bradley in Kentucky. Matt and Buff gave me a real nice report the other day, so it looks like she's ready to really start training in earnest now. That's good news. We do still have openings for this partnership that we're working on. Other 2-year-olds joining the partnership as well. So by all means, join Matt, join I in this Derby Day Racing venture. Matt, I hope to have you out in Kentucky watching our filly and more sometime soon.
I hope to have that experience. You are right, Brian. And as always, I want to thank the HorseCenter fans. I want to thank Jack, who came and said hello, a regular viewer of ours, Brian. And as always, I want to thank Brett Workman for putting together the show.
Look at that. You say hello to Matt at Travers, and you get a personal mention on HorseCenter. How cool is that? Yes, thank you to Brett Workman for the producing of HorseCenter every week. I want to thank our sponsor, the best contest site out there, Derby Wars. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the Horse Racing Nation YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? Do it now. But for now, we will be back again on Thursday next week with schedules needing to make it more of a preview show next week. So we'll be back in 1 week next Thursday here on HorseCenter. We look forward to seeing you then.